So without further ado, it's now 12:04, we can begin. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning if you're in South Africa, or this afternoon during your lunch hour if you're in Singapore. Thank you for taking the time to join us. On behalf of the South African Chamber of Commerce here in Singapore, I would like to welcome you to our discussion today, where we'll be talking about Singapore's digital economy. So before we begin, we have a few distinguished guests I would like to thank for giving their time. His Excellency, the High Commissioner of South Africa. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us, sir. I know how much you love technology as a former technology consultant yourself. I would also like to thank His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Philippines, for joining us today. I hope you will find interest in our conversation today. Lastly, I would like to thank our platinum sponsor of the South African Chamber of Commerce, St. James's Place, for sponsoring this event. As a FTSE 100 company, St. James's Place looks after the financial interests of 800,000 people across Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, and the UK. If you would like to learn more about the business, please visit sjp.asia or reach out to me directly. Now, without further ado, then the reason that we're all here, I would like to get started with our panel discussion on Singapore's digital economy. So I would like to welcome our panelists here. We have Nigel Ritson, who is the president of the chamber and one of the founding members, but also he is the COO of Roubler, which he started exactly 4 years ago today in Singapore and has now grown it across the UK, Asia, Australia, and Africa. So he really knows what he's talking about in terms of digital transformation, as well as digital workforce management. Next, we are joined by Chad Richts, who is the co-founder of a cybersecurity firm called Cysense, based out of Singapore. Chad is an experienced cybersecurity professional and has the opportunity to design, implement, and lead cybersecurity for many Fortune 500 companies across Africa, Europe, and Southeast Asia. Some of the areas that Chad has had the opportunity to work on include security assurance, cyber defense, and incident response, which has allowed him to become intimately familiar with the realms of cybersecurity and the hottest topics in technology, including cloud, AI, machine learning, big data, and crypto. So Chad, thank you very much for giving up your time to join us today. We're very glad to have you. And introducing our last panelist, Mr. Stephen Yates, who is the CTO of Alumni Services. Stephen is a very senior executive, although he looks quite young, with over 20 years of experience domestically and internationally. He has worked in numerous fields in finance, hospitality, logistics, CMT, mining, oil, and gas. He's also worked around the world in some very interesting places, including the UK, Australia, Singapore, and he's had a number of projects and assignments across Ghana, Kenya, Malaysia, and even further afield in Western Europe. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the introduction.
I know I could have carried on about all of your illustrious careers, but I think that is the purpose of today's discussion in any case, to highlight your valuable insights. So, gentlemen, if I may, I would like to just stop sharing the screen and just have a formal discussion with you and ask you an initial opening question. So the first question I'd like to ask you gentlemen is, what attracted you to Singapore in the first place? If you could tell us a little bit about your personal story. Could we start with Nigel?
Yeah, Mike, thanks very much for the introduction. And yeah, it's exactly 4 years ago that my journey to Singapore started. Arriving in Changi Airport for the first time in my life and not really knowing where to go and how to find anything, or even where to shop. So yeah, 4 years ago, I was headhunted by a firm in Australia to start up their Singapore operation for a very brand new software business called Roubler. I'd come from the workforce management space for many years in South Africa, working for the JSE listed company AdCorp in their technology department, and just saw this as a massive opportunity. You know, coming from corporate straight into sort of a startup life, and wow, that was a journey. The startup life in Singapore was exciting. It was also very scary for me as a newbie to Singapore, and I can remember hitting the ground running. Probably the closest memory to me was trying to say, well, we need to start a business, we need income. That's the main thing. So what do we have to do? And the nature of our product was workforce management technologies in the shift-based workforce space. And I remember myself sort of coming back from the office at 5 every afternoon and just sort of going to every bar and every restaurant on Boat Quay and knocking on doors to sell product. And that's where it started. And it was very, I felt like a Tupperware salesman in the beginning, but ultimately built a really nice business in Singapore. And the funniest thing is, and how this all worked in terms of our global expansion, was I was traveling between South Africa and Singapore for the period of about 4 months as my family was here in South Africa. And I said to the guys, hey guys, look, the massive opportunity here in South Africa, let's give it a go. And we started in true entrepreneurial style. I don't think we even had a business registered in South Africa before we actually landed our first real customer. And that's how the South African business started. So really a good story of expanding out of Singapore into South Africa. And yeah, what attracted me to the place was it was exotic. It was Asia. I'd never been. And it was just something of an opportunity to start spreading my wings across the globe. Yeah, that was me.
So it sounds like a great story, and using Singapore as a launch pad to the rest of the world, as we see common across many business industries here in Singapore. So I think, Chad, if we could then get on to you and kind of what attracted you to Singapore. What is your story?
Yeah, awesome. Coincidentally, you've also been here 4 years to the week. So probably around the same time as you, Nigel.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, there's 2 parts to it. So what originally attracted me to Singapore? Why did I come here? And then I think also an important part for this discussion is, why did we stay here? Why did we decide to start our business here? So what attracted me here, it was actually quite pragmatic. In my previous company, I was one of the founding incident response team members. And incident response basically is we the guys get called in, and we parachute in when someone's been hacked, and we help them recover. Generally, our clients were big MNCs, they're global teams, so they expected us to be on call with them 24/7 for quite literally weeks at a time. It was myself and our team in South Africa and our team in the UK, and we were just facilitating this, and it was just very impractical. So we realized we either needed to move to the US or to Singapore or to Asia to kind of get that 24/7 rolling shift going. So I had the option, either I moved to New York, we had an office in New York, or I moved to Singapore to build the team out here in Singapore. Personally, for myself, I was always quite optimistic about Asia. I think this is the future. This is where technology is moving, this is where innovation is moving. So it's kind of a no-brainer to come here over New York. The reason we started our business in Singapore, so being here for about 4 years, I did my MBA where I met my other co-founder here in Singapore. And the 3 co-founders of our business, so that's myself, the one guy is Mexican, the other guy is American. All 3 of us are very bullish about Asia. We think this is where innovation is going to happen. This is where our clients are. And so that's one of the reasons we decided to start the business here. We see our potential clients and the markets we're targeting are growing very rapidly. So specifically, one of our target audiences are startups. And there's a really, really good startup community in Singapore, first and foremost. But even around the rest of Southeast Asia, you're seeing it growing really, really quick. So it's an exciting opportunity for us there. And the other aspect is obviously the digital transformation, which topic of today is growing very quickly in Asia, which is good for us. And the final reason we stayed here is Singapore and the Singapore government's very pragmatic and very, very pro-business. For us specifically, what this looked like is we don't want to spend time educating our customers. And generally what we see in cybersecurity is cybersecurity education lags regulation. So the Singapore government's done a great job over the last 5-10 years, putting in place regulation, putting in place controls so that the country is actually prepared for cybersecurity. And for us, it's now a matter of time. We don't need to educate our customers. We can actually just start having conversations with them and helping them secure themselves. So I think it's just a no-brainer for us to be here in Singapore, and we're very excited about it.
I mean, generally across the technology sector, as wide as it is, everyone tends to say the same thing about the government's approach to pro-business and offering opportunity to businesses to come and start up here. So, I mean, Stephen, I think that brings us nicely along to you then, and your experience thus far. What attracted you to Singapore, and what's your personal story?
So thanks, Mike. A little bit different from the other guys, actually, in that if you'd asked me, I left South Africa on the 31st of January 2020, and if you'd asked me on the 30th of November 2019, I wasn't going anywhere. It happened really quickly. An ex-boss of mine, who's the CEO, managing director of Alumni, phoned me up and said, "I want to start a startup, and I want you to come do it with me." And I said, "Fine, let's do it." And jumped on a plane and flew over here with my 3 golden retrievers and my wife, and that was that. I think that's testament, as you said, to Singapore, to its ability to enable technology startups, and that's really fantastic. I think it's also testament to the name of the company, which is Alumni, and it's about our network. It's the network of people who we know through our years in the industry, both on the supply side, but also on the demand side, so potential customers, but also people that we can tap into to solve really interesting problems. And that's what it is. So Seb reached out to his alumni, to myself and to a few others, and said, "Right, let's start this thing." And we did. That was 2 years ago now, in the middle of COVID, which was very interesting in itself. We are headquartered in Singapore, but we've now expanded to Hong Kong and to the UK as well. So very exciting. And I'm sure there's lots to come.
Oh, I mean, within 2 years to be in almost 3 continents is, I mean, that's growth if we've ever seen it, right? So congratulations already. So I think the next piece is, look, we've all mentioned COVID-19 already throughout our first question here. So the next one really is just about, in general, about your experience and the effect that COVID-19 has had on, the speed of adoption to going digital. Has it hampered it? Has it increased it, accelerated it? Or what are your takes? And Chad, I think if we could start with you and what you've seen in your experience so far.
Yeah, cool. So COVID-19, I mean, I'd like to hear Nigel and Stephen's opinion as well, but for us, it's honestly been astronomical in the rates that it's caused digital transformation. There's been a meme I've seen quite a lot on LinkedIn. So it's a graph that's been turned into a meme. But basically, it's like, who's your biggest change agents for digital transformation? And it's like CEO 5%, CIO 8%, customers 12%, and then COVID-19 like 90% or whatever the extra percentage is there. I mean, I think honestly, it's testament to how quickly companies have had to adapt because of COVID-19. More like relevant data points. So when we started our business, we had to research it a lot. We had to figure out, okay, what is our customer market size? Is this business even worth pursuing? And obviously part of that is we need to work with digital companies. So during our research, we actually came across a McKinsey study, which said something along the line of APAC digital transformation has increased 4 years. So where we are today is where they expected us to be 4 years' time, and 4 to 10 years actually, depending on how you measure digital transformation. So it's been absolutely astronomical. Anecdotally for us, we originally wanted to target and work with startups and secure startups. And we're seeing a huge market segment coming along now of companies that were traditionally a lot more analog, and they're going through digital transformation process now themselves, and they need to be secure, and they realize they need to be secure. So even for our business, it's created an entire new market segment because it's been so rapid. Yeah.
And I mean, as it goes with speed, right? That is when you'll be vulnerable because the business is growing faster than what your technology can keep up with. So obviously, great opportunity for you guys in cybersecurity space.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of your business, Nigel, and workforce shift management and all of that, the speed of adoption to going digital with that must be essential to the continuation of business during COVID.
Yeah, well, look, when COVID hit, I was actually in South Africa, sort of trying to secure some customers in February 2020. we were one of the first flights that came into South Africa with masks on, and the South African government came on board, and it was quite scary and all of that. Anyway, hit back in March, we saw our world collapse. You know, we in the B2B shift based workforce management software solution, and shift-based workforces all of a sudden closed down. We're talking about hospitality, food and beverage. We're talking about retail. Everything went into lockdown. So we saw our world sort of change overnight. And obviously, as a startup, this was quite concerning from our investors' point of view as well. But funny enough, and echoing Chad's observations or reflections on this, something shifted. All of a sudden, everyone needed to be in the cloud. So Asia typically had a mentality of on-prem solutions, working off a VPN or whatever it may be. And then there was this automatic drive to cloud because people realized that they needed to do stuff in remote places. To give you some idea, Loco Group, which I'm sure most of you have eaten at or had a few drinks at in Singapore, the CEO of that business got stuck in LA in the United States. And he was logging into Roubler, checking what was going on the ground from LA into Roubler to see what was happening at all of his branches. So all of a sudden, this sort of compounding need to get into the cloud and have data ready, feeding the right information, became an absolute need. And echoing Chad's point around security, with that shift came the need of security and a lot of anxiety around that. So definitely found that there was a sort of a combination of these two things happening. But I think probably the biggest observation that we found through COVID was the need for information now about what's going on in your business. You didn't have the luxury of being on site to see what was going on because you're working from home. You didn't have the luxury of making decisions at the end of the month to cut costs on things like time spend, etc. So you had to do it the day-to-day agile nature of running a business. So we saw that need for big data being crunched into information that was relevant for companies, hospitality groups, to keep their finger on the pulse of what was essentially going on. And then the other big point that I just wanted to mention was there was this drive for consolidation. So what we started to notice is that people had for the first time an opportunity to sit back and sort of look at their business and say, well, where are we wasting money? So, I mean, I don't know if there's any CFOs on the call today, but essentially there was this process with any of the accountants in the group where they would go through the P&L and sort of say, well, why are we spending this money? Because all of a sudden there was time to do this. So what we started to see was people saying, well, do we need a big incumbent ERP system? Because are we using it to its full extent? So there was a lot of questions being asked, and ultimately our business actually did quite well through COVID because people still needed to be payrolled, and thanks to the government, there was a lot of support throughout the globe. You know, in Australia you had JobKeeper, South Africa you had TERS, in Singapore you had the government job scheme that's still going on in some format. So, you know, the people were still employed. I think some of our vertical competition, when I say vertical competition, I'm saying guys that are just very modular, they really suffered because they couldn't be rostered to go to work. There was no rosters because no one was working, but there was definitely still a payroll. So what that taught us around our consolidation strategy of having a system all in one really led to us sort of surviving through COVID and coming out the other end quite well.
Well, I think the consolidation piece is quite interesting, and I think that kind of ties into Stephen's business very well in terms of people coming to you with a problem and saying, please help me get a strategy and please help me execute. So Steve, if you could tell us a little bit about the speed of adoption that you've seen since COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone agrees that it has been accelerated dramatically. I think that if we look under the hood, it's a little bit more complex than that. If we look at it, that technology adoption has accelerated dramatically, but it was from COVID, which had nothing to do with technology, right? It was all about people. So what can we assume? We can assume that actually this is all about people. It's got nothing to do with technology at the end of the day. The technology is no different to what it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Well, it is a bit, but not really. It's about people, and it's about how do we get people to adopt these things, and how do we see the value of lots of people adopting something with a little bit of incremental value, and how does that then give exponential value to an organization? And by forcing companies to use things like Teams and Zoom and whatever it might be, and to collaborate from home, and forcing companies to have to log on to the cloud or log on to unique systems that potentially weren't even in place a few weeks before, whether or not you knew how to use them, or whether or not it was 100% fit for purpose, you just had to do it. You just had to get on with it. And that has taught us something about change management and about how people are adaptable and how we can adapt to technology. But it also makes us realize the importance of focusing on that change element to get people ready for technology. Because we have really done the simple stuff now, right? We've done the collaboration, we've done the talking to each other, we've done the stuff that's pretty modular and easy to do. But Nigel mentioned the big ERP systems, the big CRM systems, moving full wholesale businesses into the cloud. This is not simple stuff, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So yes, it's accelerated. People are thinking about it, boards are making decisions on it and are ready to commit money to it. It's still going to take a while, and it's good that we're starting now. But it's really important that when we do that, don't underestimate the importance of taking the people along on that journey, or it's all for naught. It doesn't matter that we've accelerated this, and it doesn't matter that all of a sudden, everyone wants to be on a software as a service technology or be paying for something per user per month. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, I would say that that's probably the key thing. The one other point to echo what Nigel was saying is around simplification and consolidation. People are bombarded by digital now, like more so than ever. And we have to make it as simple to interact with our organization, whether it's as an employee or whether it's as an external agent or whether it's as a customer or whatever it is. It needs to be simple. It cannot absorb a huge amount of brain power and mental capacity, because there's just too much. We're just being bombarded.
Oh, I mean, all of us, not only in our work, but then also in our personal lives, we use technology. Everyone is competing for, is competing for our attention. Advertisers, social media platforms, and that's only in your personal time. So then in your professional life, there's going to be various market participants also competing for your attention there. So simplification, consolidation, these are all words that kind of sums up this transformation that we've seen the digital economy in Singapore going through. So I think that also that moves us nicely along, because as we said earlier, with this moving at such a rapid pace, this leaves companies vulnerable. So Chad, I was wondering if we could now dive into a little bit more of a questioning to you, where we understand a little bit on what is your opinion and how important, digital transformation for companies to remain competitive is. Does this apply to all sectors, or is it more important to specific industries?
That's a good question, and my answer is going to be slightly controversial considering the topic of this session. But honestly, I'd say it depends, right? Do you need to digitally transform to be competitive? It depends. So I think to start off on the second part of that question for you is you asked about sectors. In my opinion, and again, I'd like to hear that there's perspective on this, but I think it's a sector agnostic transformation going on. Every single sector is going to be digitally transformed. It's only a matter of time. The way I look at it is kind of there's three buckets where organizations are in, right? You get these sectors that have already been redefined by technology. These are everything with tech and tech, fintech, prop tech, reg tech, health tech, whatever. They've been redefined. It's only a matter of time until people who aren't digitally transformed are going to lose customers. It's just much easier to deal with a digital bank than a real life bank, for example. The second bucket of sectors, I'd say, are currently being redefined by technology. So their entire business is not being replaced by an app or a platform, but there's core parts of their business and core parts of value that they bring to the table that has been replaced. I think a good example of this would be your corporate secretaries in Singapore. So Awesome, Osome, Sleek, Bloomeg, all of these companies, fundamentally, they still have accountants, they still have secretaries, but they have technology automating the interactions between them, and they're speeding up a lot of the work they would do. So traditionally, I'd go and hire an accountant or secretary. It'd be quite time consuming and I have to manually get them my files, get them all the details. Whereas now they have platforms to kind of get this data and then they can do their work. The third one I'd say is sectors where they're beginning to adopt technology. So these are the sectors I think when people think, oh, not everyone's being impacted by digital transformation, these are the sectors people think of. But I'd argue that they are actually being impacted. Manufacturing is a good example of this. Generally, you have your manufacturing process, which is in an isolated factory somewhere, completely cut off from the rest of the world. Traditionally, there's no need for digital transformation there. But what we are seeing is supporting functions, they're using technology. So whether it's to get more customers, whether it's for marketing, they are using technology and they are transforming there. And the companies that are doing that are getting that competitive advantage. But even more than that, there's a lot of startups trying to move into the space and develop manu-tech or whatever it would be called, and kind of automate and bring digital transformation to these sectors. So it's only a matter of time until they reach bucket one as well. The reason I say it depends, my original answer is, for me, there's also I'd look at the stage of a company, right? If you're an early stage company, you want to compete for the next 10 years, 100% you need to be a digitally enabled company. If you're a SME, and there's a lot of companies that fall in this bucket, you're an SME that's been around for 10 years, you have no one to pass your business on, your growth's at zero, you're flatlined, you have loyal customers, and you plan to retire in 2 or 3 years and wind down your business. I would argue that for you, it probably would not be worth going through the whole digital transformation process, because there's no future value for you to capture by doing that. So that's where my it depends comes on. It's more looking at your maturity of your company, your future goals of the company, as opposed to your sectors.
And it's very interesting because, as you were saying, for example, the companies that fall into the bucket where they haven't really reached their full capacity of digital transformation, they're outsourcing pieces of their business to be transformed. It's kind of similar to what Nigel was saying about how that element of payroll becomes even more essential and how to make that, as Stephen said, even simpler. So Chad, I think, given that your clients are, by design digitally enabled from the start, could you tell us about how your clients have been successful from being digital from day one? Perhaps you can elaborate on how they've gone about setting up this way. So you start a business, but yet from day one, you're digitally enabled.
Yeah, cool. I think probably just kind of not answering your question, but as a side note, it's worth mentioning that, and I think it's just because it's topical, this is why I'm mentioning it. Originally, our target audience were companies that are digitally enabled from day one. But because of this digital transformation we're seeing a lot of SMEs who weren't digitally enabled when they started, going through the transformation process and actually becoming clients. And it's actually becoming a significant portion of our target audience, just because of how rapid we are seeing digital transformation. So just another side there. But to actually answer your question, I think some of the key factors that allow companies to do to be digital from day one and be successful at it. I think relevant to what Steve said is there's the element of people, right? Companies where we see doing this well, they have a key stakeholder or key stakeholders and champions who understand technology and understand digital from day one. And typically our kind of clients are startups that are VC backable. So to be a VC backable startup, often you're a very technology oriented company, which means you need a tech person on your founding team. That's typically a CTO. And the CTO is purely a digital person. Everything they want to do, they want to automate, they want to put it in some cloud solution. And so I think that's very key, is if you don't have that kind of person in your organization, to build that company culture, it's going to take quite a while to do that. And you need to do that. You can't just buy technology. You need to have that company culture being driven by that person. The second thing I think is very important and very useful, and I can actually maybe speak a bit anecdotally because this is exactly the kind of process we're going through ourselves, is there's a plethora of tools out there that that you can leverage to make you digitally enabled from day one, right? There's the whole as a service phenomenon that we're seeing. It's literally anything you can think of. Someone's trying to build that as a service. And I see a company now in South Africa that's doing delivery as a service, for example. And it's a great trend, because I now don't need to go figure out how to be an expert marketer or an expert salesperson, because there's a bunch of tools as a service tools I can tap into to do a lot of the work that I would typically need to do myself. And so I think that's very interesting. And obviously the cloud adoption helps with that a lot. Anything that you can't just pay for as a service, you can effectively go build in AWS or Azure or Google Workspace, Google Cloud, for a fraction of the cost of having to go set up your own servers. And so I think that's also very important. And the last point, and also Nigel actually touched on this, I think, is the value of data. As a technical person in my business, right, I can say, cool, we need to be a digitally enabled company. But for non-technical people, they're like, okay, that just seems like a waste of money. But now if I can directly translate that data back to business performance, whether it's better revenues or lower costs, everyone in the company is going to be on board. So for the specific example is kind of your marketing data. You communicate with potential customers. You need to validate validate whether they're a good lead or not. This is something that can be driven with data. And now I have the data as a technical person in the company to kind of provide these insights. Everyone else in the business is going to be very excited about this and want to tap into this and want to use this to do their job better. And so I think those are the three main things: is have that person, have that stakeholder, leverage the technology out there, and then use data to excite the rest of the company.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more there from that side. Nigel, I see you want to say something there.
No, so I always want to say something, Mike. But yeah, I just wanted to echo what Chad was saying there. So, I mean, in the past, what we saw pre-COVID was the opportunity cost of, throwing money at people. So just saying, right, we need another payroll person in the payroll department, and sort of just throwing that temporary solution into place, rather than obviously investing in a software that can automate that process. I just don't think companies have that luxury anymore, which is actually resulting in a number of different trends, even with regards to talent management and those type of things within, I mean, specifically Singapore as well, where people are needing to be reskilled in, jobs of the future, instead of jobs of data capturing, learn how to code something to create an automation somewhere. So I think it's having a massive change in the workplace. I mean, we've noticed on our side, the demand for efficiencies is becoming huge in the sectors that we service, which are the hardest hit sectors, like hospitality, retail, and food and beverage. But it's actually making them more efficient by, adopting different technologies, but the right technologies, because I think I just wanted to echo what Stephen said, is that there's a lot out there. I mean, you can just Google payroll software and you'll have 50 hits on the first page. So there's a lot of competition, which is actually then driving the demand for developers. And I mean, I was looking at a statistic just the other day. Developer salaries in Australia have got up by 30% since the beginning of the year, the demand for salaries. And this is just because of the huge influx of software as a service, as Chad was saying, and the need for this bubble. So everybody's writing apps and everybody's trying to create automation, but it's what's important to the business, just as Stephen was saying, around, what are those fundamentals that we're trying to solve for? And again, what Chad said, it's translating data into information, but quickly, so that you can make an impact in your business tomorrow, not at the end of next month. And I think that's the key point there.
Yeah. Just coming from both of you now, I'm just hearing that data is the driving force for efficiency in business. So if you can simplify it and have a single dashboard that is going to tell you where your money's going to and how efficiently it's being spent, I think every business can benefit from that. So Stephen, coming into you, I mean, both of Nigel and Chad just touched on people and the, you know, the role they play in the interplay of technology and people and how that fits into digital transformation. I mean, that's kind of what you guys really focus on. So has that changed a lot in the last 18 months?
Yeah, so I mean, we see digital transformation really as four key things. First, it's your strategy. You need to have an idea of what you're doing. The second is around technology. So obviously, being digital, there's, you know, what is the technology that you are going to use to enable that? And that can be quite simple or it can be quite complex. Then you have to deliver that. So delivery becomes really important. And then most importantly is your people. So how do your people adopt that? How do they continue working in that way? So that's what we see as a digital transformation makeup. The key thing here is that it's not simple, it's not linear. You know, we have all seen those lovely Gantt charts where you have these burn downs and whatnot. That's not how the world works, right? We're an interconnected network of things. So if I'm dependent on you for something, yes, I'm dependent on you for it, right? But it could have a different importance to me than it does to you. It could contribute a lot more to my life than it does to your life. Maybe I just don't like you. You know, these are all elements that talk to how important or how well that dependency is going to get resolved. And that's not something that's done through a simple Gantt chart. And it's not something that a project manager goes, it's on track. You know, that's not how this works. And that's why we see loads of digital transformations failing, because we forget that it's people delivering them. And who are they delivering them for? Well, they're delivering them for hundreds of thousands of clients if it's a consumer business. You know, they can delivering it for internal staff. They're delivering it for external partners. And what is their interaction like? So there's all of these real complexities that we have to think about. And it's no longer good enough to just go, well, what do we think they want to do? And let's tell them what they should be doing. You know, banks today, a banking environment is being determined by how people are engaging on social media and by how people are engaging with their FMCG purchases. That's determining what that's going to look like. If you told that to someone in banking, you know, 5 years, 10 years ago, they would have called you crazy. And that becomes really interesting to look at how this all comes together and what is this people aspect that we have to handle. The other thing which is really interesting is on the supply side to deliver these projects because of COVID, because of the acceleration into the digital world, supply has become a very different thing. No longer are we like, oh, well, we have to have everyone in the office on site delivering on that. Now it doesn't matter where you are, you know, as long as you can work more or less the hours, as long as you're contactable, and it's fine. It doesn't matter where you are. So that changes the whole nature of supply for digital transformation. And countries that have invested a huge amount in digital, like the Indias of the world, the Philippines of the world, that are low cost geos, are set to really score from that kind of thing. The trick there is quality, right? You know, so are they delivering at the right quality that the world is looking for? We actually use a development team out of South Africa because of the link. Obviously, it's quite nice, and yes, they're more expensive, but we find that the quality is at a different kind of level. So these are the different playoffs that you have to decide on, and it gets really tricky. I mean, it's not something that's easy. Finally, I guess, is the workforce. You know, how enabled is your workforce once this is done, once your transformation is done? I mean, it's never really done, but once you get to a point where now you're operating as a digitally transformed company, are you just putting pig on a lipstick, lipstick on a pig, for want of a better word, or have you actually changed? You know, are you working in a different way? Are you using things like agile in the way of work? Are you using tools like OKRs, which the Googles and you know the digital companies of the world have invented to align business strategy with what's happening? These are the things that you need to consider. And if you haven't done them, and if you're doing things how you did them 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but now you've got all these cool new tools and this cool young workforce that's coming in with all their bright ideas, it's probably a mismatch, and it's probably, you know, not going to go so well. So those are the sort of interactions that you need to consider when going through this process. Has it changed dramatically over the last 18 months? I wouldn't say so. I would say it's accelerated. I wouldn't say it's changed. I think the awareness of it, a lot of people had their head in the sand about it. It always was the case, but a lot of people were just like, well, I don't believe it's the case, so it will not be the case. That's not true, right? It is the case, and this has just proven that. So I think, if we focus on that element of it, then we will have far more successful digital transformations delivered, and in a shorter time.
I think that ties so well into the next question about, the barriers that, customers, clients, businesses face when they're going through a digital transformation process. You've mentioned so many things there, Steve, in terms of, people, how to use the data and how to get people to adopt it. The various multiple means of software available and tools available to help you execute. What would you say in your experience is one of the biggest barriers that prevents people from starting a digital transformation journey?
I would say there's probably three barriers, and probably two of them are related. So the first barrier I would say is still cost. Digital transformations are not cheap things, despite everything telling you how it'll save you money, and probably will in the long run, but they're not cheap things to do. Especially in COVID, where a lot of companies have been hit really, really hard, and don't necessarily have the money to spend. They've just had that money to try and keep staff employed and the business turning over. So cost is something, but you just have to realize that if you don't invest, the consequences could be far more dire. And not to fearmonger, right? I mean, it's to Chad's point, not everyone needs to invest to the same degree, but rather make a conscious decision around that investment than just do nothing. The second one is around perception and perspective. So that's, the world has changed, and in terms of supply, in terms of demand, in terms of where our staff work, how our staff work. And a lot of senior leadership teams that are of the old guard are struggling with that. There are a lot of companies, you see it in the news every day. This company is forcing everyone back to work. This company is getting rid of offices completely. This company's whatever. There's stories about it, but they're struggling. The old guard leaders who have been so successful are struggling with some of these concepts. The idea that you can have massive teams sitting in other countries, or that actually your supplier might be delivering you services from another country that are at a better quality than you could get from your own country. There's a lot there, right? I mean, there's things around, are you prepared to give away control? There's patriotism things. There's all sorts of things that you need to consider. But it is changing. I think that's testament to all of us. We've all spoken about the fact that all of our companies are existing in more than one country at the moment. We're all doing business in more than one country at the moment, and we're all delivering successfully in those countries. So I think that is changing, but it has been a barrier and will continue to be a barrier, especially for larger organizations. And then the next thing is that they need to decide, that not everything has to be perfect. So a lot of teams go, okay, we need to digitally transform. What does that look like? What is the digital future going to look like? And you can spend years trying to figure that out, but that's not really what you need to do. Is you just need to make a decision and move. There's this thing, fail fast, and yes and no. So I mean, it is important. Probably try and do a little bit of knowledge investigation, so you are more likely not to fail. But do fail fast and make decisions, because if you do something now, the decision you make once you've done that will guaranteed be different to the decision you would have made, assuming you made that decision at the beginning. So don't make it. Just get on the horse and get going, right? That's got a lot to do with this new agile way of work, and there's a lot of pros and cons to agile, and I don't want to get into that. But make a decision, get going. Not everything's going to be perfect. Expect a bit of a bumpy road, but where you get to, you'll get there much quicker, and you'll have happier people. People are resilient. They'll be okay with a bit of a bumpy road, as long as they're on the road. If you just stand there pointing at a road, they're going to get irritated with you. So I think that's a big barrier, is not needing to know everything before you start.
Absolutely. And Stephen, I love how you can take something so serious and make it just so light and funny. I really appreciate that. And also we're just touching on agile and people management and all of that. I mean, that's really, Nigel, that's your bread and butter with what you guys have accomplished in such a short space of time with your clients. Perhaps could you share some insights with us about the trends that you're seeing specifically around workforce management and how they compare to pre and post COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We've noticed a number of trends that came out. I mean, I think every software business jumped onto the trends, the fashionable trends. So, as an example, when we all had to use trace together and clock in to a restaurant, you know, our development team said, okay, let's go and embed that in our mobile app for staff. And you know, that process now has completely changed from the government. So for us, it's been about sort of seeing the trends, but really stepping back and questioning, are they going to be there tomorrow? Do we need to design these solutions for customers for other purposes to be reused into the future? But one piece that's come out of this is mental health analytics. There's been a massive drive to figure out how your staff are doing, and I think, you know, we've done some development work on shift-based analytics when, you know, people come to work and, you know, how their shift has gone, and sort of monitoring that between different venues. Some of our customers are using this already to see, you know, where do you have a HR problem? Where do you need a customer to engage with their staff? So a massive sort of trend in mental health analytics, caring for people, and sort of having systems and softwares that have been developed to focus on the human. And I mean, I can just say, you know, Stephen, to echo what you were saying, I mean, the trend is change management and how you deal with that within an organization. And we have similar challenges, right? So CEO, CFO make decisions around digital transformation of a business, see big picture, but on the ground, there's a completely different view on this, right? Why change what you don't need to change? So it's about, yeah, taking people on the journey. And we've noticed more of that, and more consideration of that. It's not just dictatorial anymore. We are doing this. It's more consultative within a business or within an environment. So yeah, definitely those type of trends. And I mean, I think probably one of the big things that we've seen is the ability to keep up with what's going on. So there's so much input at the moment, in terms of information, or sorry, data, but actually sort of feeding through that and finding out what actually means, what's relevant to the business. So yeah, from a shift-based workforce point of view, we've seen a massive uptick in the gig economy. I feel that this is the way the world will go eventually. I mean, 62%, I think it is, could be wrong. Most statistics are made up on the fly, but it's about 60 to 65% of the American economy is shift-based. So if you have to look at how, you know, the future world of work is going to be, I think it's going to be very fluid, very dynamic. People are going to be doing a lot of different things at the same time, and they need software, they need tools to enable that.
Well, I think that's brilliant, Nigel. And also, I mean, in terms of what we've all said, the power of data and the efficiency that it gives you, and looking at staff's mental health and the correlation that could have to perhaps turnover or profitability of a specific branch where there is low mental health, according to whatever metrics you're using to measure it. Immediately, red flag, let's look after our people better, and perhaps they can make us more money, which is also a wonderful thing, where possibly it would have been just ignored and said, oh, they're just having a bad day, instead of maybe they're actually just not happy. Look after your people.
100%. I mean, the world is built up of people, right? So all this digital transformation, cybersecurity, workforce management, it's all irrelevant without people. Because you don't need cybersecurity if you don't have people trying to hack you. You don't need workforce management if you don't have a workforce. So it's all built around people, and if you're satisfying that that piece of the economy, I think with the tools and you're making them relevant, that's where the future is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So I think, look, we're coming up onto the hour here, everyone. So I would like to kind of wrap up and just simply ask you all, what is the best way for people to find you if they wanted to find out more about the work that you do, or if they want to find out more about, you know, how they can perhaps collaborate with you? Nigel, how can people find you?
Yeah, just Roubler.com, anywhere in the world. And then obviously on LinkedIn, you can find me there. And yeah, let's talk. We're obviously always looking for integration partners and people to add value to our solution and to collaborate. So very keen.
Awesome. And for yourself, Chad?
Probably the best would be on LinkedIn. You can just find me on LinkedIn, Chad Richts. Yeah, very keen to talk to anyone who's just interested in cybersecurity and wants to hear more. We're always keen to talk to people, so reach out.
Awesome. And lastly, yourself, Stephen.
Yeah, also LinkedIn is good. So Steve Yates at LinkedIn, or Stephen Yates at LinkedIn. Alumniserve.com is our website, or stephen.yates at alumniserve.com. So whatever, reach out. We'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, fantastic, guys. Thanks very much. And I really appreciate your time and contributing to the community of the South African Chamber here in Singapore. So to our audience, again, thank you very much for your time. I would like to now just kind of talk a little bit more about the upcoming events that we have with the Chamber. If you have enjoyed what we've done here today, this is part 1 of a series, and hopefully we'll be bringing you the next part 2 coming up soon. We're going to continue in discussing the digital economy of Singapore and perhaps even further afield across the region. Areas that we're going to talk about more are going to be things like smart contracts, how artificial intelligence is enabling businesses to make decisions, etc. So if you're interested in that, please do watch all of our social medias. Please do get in touch with myself or the Chamber directly. You can find us on our social medias quite easily as well. So in terms of what we do have coming up for September, you can see the gentleman from today and our discussion that we've just hosted. But the next cool thing that we're doing also around technology and bringing people together is speed networking. So the way Nigel has kind of explained this to the rest of the board of the Chamber is that we're going to be doing virtual speed dating for business purposes. So,
yeah, that's the way.
If you would like to join us and find a way to pass business cards and meet new people in the current work from home environment that we're finding ourselves in, please do join us on the 10th of September. And the last thing that you will be seeing coming out on our YouTube channel is we're doing a property perspectives, where we're discussing with our South African real estate experts, Steph from Savills and Jason Lamb from RP Investment Management. And we're going to be talking a little bit on 3 areas, mainly investment in property. Number 2, the rights of a renter in Singapore if you're an expat. I think anyone who's lived in Singapore and moved has experienced not really understanding what their rights are. So very useful. And then obviously the third one is, what are real estate trends in terms of the new way of working? So
Mark, I just wanted to say that speed networking event, everybody, is not just limited to Singapore. We're actually bringing in the Korean Chamber of Commerce as well, Mauritius and South Africa. So there will be people across the world coming into that speed networking event. So there's quite a lot of opportunity, I think, for people to network across the globe.
Absolutely. And obviously with the various time zones, some people will be fresher than others. So yes. Remember to have some empathy there. So the last thing is, if you're looking for us on social medias, please just check out our website very easily, www.sham.sg. And you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, South African Chamber of Commerce Singapore. So everyone, once more, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've enjoyed today's presentation and discussion. See you soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks
Thanks.
for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Awesome,
Bye.
guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.